because of, I can point at any other thing, but that sports thing is the one thing I'll point at to say that schools are not committed to education right now.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think that I foresee in the future, of course, is that there really is going to be and there is now, of course, but I think it's going to be a continuing trend, is a shortage of our students who go into the hard sciences, into engineering, into those types of fields that actually are what keep us competitive in the world economy, because we hear so much today about, you know, jobs, jobs, jobs. Well, you know, when you're talking about jobs, 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 you also have to be thinking about what kind of jobs are you talking about. Because certainly, yeah, you can have a coffee shop job, but that is not a long-term, sustainable type of career to be able to buy a house on, to raise a family on. I mean, it's a job, all right, but it's not the kind of jobs that hard technology and science background, people who have those backgrounds can, by creating new and innovative industries, will be able to produce the jobs we need in this country. And I think that if we had indeed more of an emphasis on, indeed, that there was more of a glamorous look to science and technology and those types of hard sciences, as you said, the world of geekdom,
right.
That really we would end up with students that would say, you know, I've got a potential in that. I like that kind of, but not only do I kind of like it, but you know, it's kind of, well, it's exciting because other people think it's exciting too, and that's, you know, and you know, it's part of the reality is that people, including children, are more likely to gravitate towards those things that other folks find exciting and interesting because it kind of puts them in the limelight. I mean,
plus
it's
also
just,
you find friends there, and
that's
each
right.
time you find a friend, you're sharing something.
That's right.
Which is part of the education and also part of working together, which is so important.
Well, you know, and I even, again, you know, talking about having more of an emphasis on the hard sciences and technology and even like computer science and math, having more of an emphasis in our school systems in those areas. I think back to when I was a kid in high school, it was actually at a period of time where the President of the United States had set a public policy that indeed he wanted schools to focus more on those hard sciences, and he actually, there was a program that was geared more towards physics, where they even had special books and special classes that were geared at a higher level than the general physics classes, specifically because it was part of the president's program. And of course, I was younger, so I don't remember that much about it other than that, because I was interested in the sciences, that actually I was enrolled in that class, and it was a tough class, and but we had a separate book, and it was different. And even before that, when I was in elementary school, those kids who had an interest or a propensity for the sciences, the teacher actually, because the school district had invested in these extra experimental modules, that those students that were more geared towards that or interested in it, the teacher could identify those students in their class, and then they would have them complete those extra modules in both science, the sciences of biology and chemistry and physics. And that was sort of somewhere along the line early on that I had teachers who identified me as somebody that they wanted to encourage to do those modules. But see, that was over and above your regular coursework. You still had to do your regular coursework with everybody else in the class, but then during recess or after school, then you were doing extra modules. And it wasn't going home to watch TV, it was, hey, you got an extra module to do.
Well, on top of that, I remember when I was going to school, I was having a problem with my classes at one point, and Now they call it anime, but at that time it was called comics books.
Oh.
And I'm talking heresy now because of any teacher, you mention that to them, and the first thing you go is, oh, don't talk to me about it, except for a couple of very special teachers. But I would like to see that it's an art. It really is an art itself. And if you read the books, you've got them from the very basic to the very, very splendiferous, as it is, as far as the writing goes.
For the comic books.
For the comic books.
Yeah.
In fact, they have about 5 different names for them now, so that you can understand that they are written for all different forms. But the idea is that you have to grab a student when he's young and get him interested in something. So I see if you can do comic books, or if you can get the wizards from 3M to come over and show you what science can do, the science wizards of 3M or somebody else like that, but get a child to looking at that they need that math, they need that science, they need that reading, that all this stuff is
and that it's fun.
interplayed.
And that it's fun. It can be fun. Yes.
In fact, like I said, with the anime, it's just like right now, we find our kids are so often in these computer games now where they won't pull their heads out for hours and hours and hours. Well, it's intriguing, but you could have them actually read a comic book that has a serial type effect, where they're going to have to read 4 or 5 books to find out whatever happened to their favorite hero, and they're going to be developing the functions they need to do in life,
Right.
to read, to write, to add, to figure out. And that's the important thing I want to reach the parents on, is we have to ask our schools to do better. But we can't just ask it in a hodgepodge way as it is right now and throw money at it. No matter how much money you throw at your child, the more important issue to me at this point is to look at what is the child needs to get to the next step. If we can't get him interested in doing math or science or reading, he's always going to be at the bottom. And if we can't start saying we should be leaving the kids in their school, the schools should be doing better. If they aren't, it's time the PTA that used to be there, Parents Teachers Association, stood up and got rid of the PCAs, which is teachers' organizations to throw the parents out. I used to be, when I was very young, and my kids were young, I was very active in all the things that they were in and trying to help all the kids read. Now, I might have not been the best parent for the job, but I thought I got some kids to learn how to read and have some fun with it. And if I could do it, and you got 5 other parents to do it, because they all decided there was something they could give to their kids, would that not bring more kids in to learn? And it shows the positive input that all parents can give, even in a low rent area that doesn't have the money to do it. It isn't the money, it is your commitment to your
Right.
child.
And I think your idea about having creative ways to get the child engaged, and I had never really actually thought about comic books before, but you know, that is actually a really good example, because if you've got a child who's interested in reading a comic book and something they can relate to, well, then maybe the next logical step could be is that, well, okay, now that you've read this, well, what would you like to see this character do next? And maybe even encourage that child to write out a couple of comics of their own about what they would like to see happen next. I mean, you could see, and again, what do you need for that? A piece of paper and a pencil. You don't need a big fancy computer, and yet it gets their imagination going.
And how many authors are out there now? There's a
Yeah.
job you could have for all the kids.
That's right. And you know, some folks out there may say, well, how workable, or how could that idea work? But you know what? I think it does work, because I'll give you a real life example that I know worked. And it's actually an example with my oldest son, is that when he was younger, for whatever reason, he had a hard time understanding exactly how to read. And it wasn't because he was dumb. He's very smart, because his aptitude for understanding information was several grades higher than his grade that he was in school. But for whatever reason, his reading level was several grades lower than where he was. And so there was this huge, huge gap between what he could read and what his interest level was. And that's a very difficult position to be in, because no book that you can read is of any interest to you because it's way too low for your interest level. And so, but one thing he was very interested in was this, was computer games, and this magazine called PC Gamer. Now, the reason he was interested in that magazine is because every month it came with a little DVD, or CD rather, of sample games, just so you could kind of try them out a little bit. But the magazine itself then would talk about some of these games that were on the disc that came each month, and they would give you little tricks and tips on how to do better, to play the game better. But you had to read the magazine in order to figure that out.
That's right.
Well, wouldn't you know, I found out that that was something he was interested in. I even got him talked into sharing the cost of the subscription with me. But you know what? Then he started to really trying to figure out what were the hidden secrets in this magazine. And of course he had a couple of really good teachers at Edgerton School that brought up his reading skills. And then he went to St. Jerome's and had a couple of really good teachers there. But I'll tell you, between them and that PC magazine, and and all of us at home reading to him every night, he got to where he needed to be. And now today, of course, he's a college graduate. He's fully employed at a hospital, and he's an Eagle Scout. So, but you have to find that one thing that makes sense to that child to make things click. And suddenly when it does, you've got it. And if a comic book is it, well, then that's what it is.
And the funny part about it is a lot of times if you do find something that will click, the child will come back to you and be overjoyed to try to show you exactly what they have picked up. And that's the most important thing here, I think, is that you find that it isn't a one-way street, that you're trying to push him up, and no matter what happens, you can't see anything until it's all done. No, you start to see it almost immediately. And it's the type of joy that you can read in better grades, and the excitement of finding that what he's doing makes sense. Now, you cannot get every child through every class perfectly. I have a son that he was very smart, and he was always at the top, but he was so smart he felt that he had to act dumb while he was in school, and it hurt him. And the reality was that my daughter went on to college. He should have gone on to college. But he's got a good job and she's got a good job, so I can't complain about either of them. My youngest is still in high school and he's doing very well. So it's not that type of an issue. What I'm trying to say to you is the joy that the child picks up off of determining that he has these abilities he didn't think he could develop at an earlier age in life. He'll share them with you to show you that he is of value and that his life now means something. And it was you who committed to that. And I see a lot of parents that are committing to their children, but they have committed the wrong way because of, like I said, putting a child on the bus. The child doesn't realize the amount of money you've spent or the time you've spent or the only thing he knows is he's on a bus for 2 hours with a bunch of kids that either he's going to be beating up on other kids or he's going to be beaten up by other kids.
Oh boy,
he rides the bus.
Oh boy, could I tell you bus ride stories. I, of course, when I was a kid, grew up out in the country. And, of course, by necessity, the bus ride was really long. And this show is too short to tell you all the bus ride stories I could tell you about, but I know what you're talking about.
Right. Well, I had to walk to school, but I remember having one or two enemies that had waylaid and wait for me. So I do have that memory too. But the important thing is that by keeping the children closer to their schools, they have more time to invest in education. And that's what I'm trying to talk to you about. That don't be putting them on a bus to another city, to another school district, because let's understand, at the end, there's not going to be enough spaces for all the children, and the worst case situations are either going to be carried in that school district or moved to another school district, bringing everybody down in that one, rather than helping them in their own city and their own area. And that's what we really should be committed to.
Right, exactly.